Hi, Cinema Summary here. This video will show you a film about the disparity between the rich and the poor in Mexico called New Order 2020. What are the possible ramifications of this gap? Spoilers ahead, you have been warned. The movie begins with a series of green elements, such as green water flowing down the stairs and a green tree with a blood-red trunk. Green is one of the colors of the Mexican flag and symbolizes the nation's hope. Following that, we cut to a scene of an older man named Rolando escorting his wife, Elisa, to a hospital. The scenario in the room suddenly becomes chaotic. Despite their acute illness, the patients are forcibly removed and replaced with critically injured demonstrators. The doctor advises him to find another private hospital for his wife, but it will cost around 200,000 pesos, which is a substantial sum. Despite the city's tumult and unrest, Marianne and her husband's post-wedding reception is held at their luxury house. Marianne's father, Ivan, is a powerful government official, so he has a lot of elite guests. All the elites at the party are having a good time and are unconcerned about what is going on in the city. Marianne hands the gifts from the guests to her mother and takes them to the safe. After the mother puts in the money, she notices that the water in the faucet is turning green. She then calls Ivan to check on the water, but nothing is wrong. Still uneasy, the mother directs Marta, the house's top waitress, to locate the green paint. A few seconds later, a vital senior government official, Victor, arrives at the party. He congratulates Marianne and discusses the success of their endeavor. While the guests enjoy themselves at the party, a new guest arrives with green paint on her neck. Soon after, Victor's bodyguard informs Victor's family that danger is approaching and that they must leave the wedding party immediately. As Victor leaves, Rolando unexpectedly appears at his former employer's house, seeking the mother for money for his wife's emergency operation. He begs for 200,000 pesos to finance his medical expenditures. The mother returns to the party and asks Ivan and Marianne's brother, Daniel, for a loan. She collects 35,000 pesos and hands them over to Rolando. However, the money is insufficient, and he wishes to request more. He then meets Marianne and describes the problem to her, who is eager to assist him. She then asks Daniel to meet Rolando to solve the problem. Daniel approaches Rolando and hands him money, urging him to leave. However, the money given is not enough. Marianne hasn't given up on helping Rolando. She tries to access the safe and lend Rolando the money inside, but the password has been changed. She approaches family members, but no one is willing to help, which enrages the bride. She has no choice but to bring her credit card and head over to Rolando, but he has already left. They depart in stealth with driver Christian and proceed to the hospital. On their way, Marianne discovers that the roads surrounding her estate have been shut off by the police in anticipation of the impending attacks, forcing them to turn around. A man on the radio reports that demonstrators have taken over the streets, but the authorities have yet to respond. Back at the party, the demonstrators in green and red painted sneak into the house. Their leader shoots Ivan, and the situation in the house spirals out of control. Instead of assisting his boss, Felipe, the head of security, shoots the guests and assists the demonstrators in raiding the house. While Felipe holds the mother as a hostage, he compels her to open the safe. He executes her as soon as the safe opens. The housemaid also loots the house's things and jewels. The rich are punished for their selfishness and arrogance by destroying the famous picture and taking everything they own. On the other hand, Marta remains loyal to her employer and surreptitiously contacts her son, urging him not to return to the house. Unfortunately, she is found by the demonstrators. With that information, Christian drives Marianne to his house. Because of the high number of demonstrators, the scene on the street was quite chaotic. Finally, they arrive at Christian's house and are greeted by Rolando. Christian tries to contact the authorities, but all phone lines are disconnected. Marianne assures Elisa that she will take her to the hospital. At night, Marianne glances out the window and sees a chaotic situation. As a result, Christian invited her to spend the night at his house. Not long after, the scene moves to Marta awakens to realize that the mansion has messed up. She walks home while the mayhem continues. The following day, Ivan is taken to the hospital, and everything at the mansion is now under control. Marianne wishes to return home, and Christian checks the situation outside the house. While checking, he is approached by military soldiers who inquire about his intention. Then, Christian takes the soldiers to his house and meets Marianne. The soldiers wanted to accompany Marianne home. Unfortunately, these troops are impolite and compel Marianne to hand over her jewelry. The city has devolved into shambles, with bodies scattered throughout the road. Marianne is taken to a military base instead of being returned home. The soldiers there are cruel to her and the other inmates. They are brought there on purpose, most of whom are relatives of the city's wealthy and essential officials. Each of them is told to jot down their personal information and contacts, which would subsequently be used for blackmail. Later in the night, all of the ladies are awakened and forced to fulfill the soldiers' demands. The following day, a funeral will be held for the deceased family members. After the funeral, Daniel and Marianne's husband approach Victor, who agrees to assist them in finding Marianne with the help of his general. Ivan has been released from the hospital and will continue his medical treatment at home. Victor visits him, giving him optimism that he will be able to find his daughter. Their dominion and control begin to crumble as their servant is no longer as obedient to their boss as they once were. Back at the military base, soldiers purposefully record videos of the inmates pleading for their release and then send these to their families, asking for a hefty ransom. At this time, the military has complete authority over civilians, and they are all obliged to cooperate. At night, Rolando walks out and asks the soldiers to let him cross the border to get a doctor. They disregard his request and execute him on the spot. Rolando and Elisa both died peacefully. The following day, Daniel receives a phone call from the military, who demand $1 million for Marianne's freedom. The brothers rush over to Victor and the general, showing them the soldiers' footage. Marianne's kidnappers discover that they will only receive approximately 200,000 pesos from the leader, but they are dissatisfied with the portion. Later that night, they sneak up on Christian and demand 800,000 pesos if he wants to see her alive. The following day, Christian and Marta came to their employer. They delivered the bad news using the provided form of transportation and their work visa. Desperate and with no other choice, Ivan agrees to the release cost of 800,000 pesos, which Daniel pays Christian. Then, they come home and hand over the money to the kidnappers. However, the greedy kidnappers claim that the 800,000 pesos are only a down payment and that they would return to collect the remaining 1 million pesos. Back to the military base, a prisoner is released after his family pays the ransom. However, as soon as he steps out of the cell, his life is taken by the soldier, signifying that no one will be restored to their families. The next day, Marta and Christian describe the incident to Daniel. Unhappy and suspicious, he immediately contacts Victor and accuses Marta and Christian of stealing Marianne. Therefore, the two kidnappers and others are apprehended by the general. After that, the general and his troops take Marianne from the military base. She believes that she is secure and General Oribe has rescued her. Meanwhile, all the prisoners in the military base were burned to get rid of the evidence. However, Marianne is brought to Christian's house, where Christian has been waiting. The cops promptly shoot Marianne in the bathroom and hand the gun to Christian, indicating that Christian shot Marianne. The next day, Daniel is notified by Victor that Marianne has been shot to death. At the end of the film, Ivan is seen attending Martha's execution with Victor and the general seated next to him, acting as if they did nothing wrong. Since then, a new order has been established under military leadership, and those without privileges have had no choice but to conform. And that wraps up our recap this time. Feel free to comment below on what we should recap next. Subscribe and like will help us a lot. Thank you for watching.